Yeah, so I think this one thing that struck me when I listened to your stories, that all of you realized that you really struggle to imagine yourself working very long, full time as a clinician, so up to your 40s or something, and there's definitely nothing wrong with it. Peter Attia said something that I remember, that we are training physicians of the past. So the progress of technology and social progress is so fast that medicine is not catching up with it. And the way we are practicing medicine is definitely not fulfilling and feasible for most of people. My students, many of them already are planning to not even go into training, which is kind of worrying, but I understand where they are coming from. But I think there's ways around it. So that's what we want to explore here, to sort of be more aware that you don't have to give up everything. You can still do medicine, but you can as well give up it, and it's completely fine. And you may have fulfilling career using all the skills and knowledge that you already acquired through your training.
And to build on that, so I hear that also quite often, and one reflection that I have on this is, at some point I looked at doctors that were more senior than me and that I really admired for who they are as doctors, and I asked myself, is there somebody among these people, and I have quite a few, whose lives I would like to have when I'm in my 40s, and I could not find that person. And that's when I thought, okay, something is off here, right? They clearly are impressive people, but clearly this is not what I want. And also looking at the private life and the whole setup that they had built for themselves. And frankly, I think most of them, if you had asked them 15 years earlier, they would have also said, no, I don't want that. Right? They just kind of sleepwalked into it by being very excellent and by being able to run up a hill, which we all are really good at. But sometimes we're not so good with choosing the right hill, or with challenging if it's still the right hill when we go halfway through. And at the same time, I think I also know a lot of people who highly regret not having studied medicine. They ended up doing health economics, or I don't know, medtech engineering or something else. I have one friend, he's a successful business person doing real estate now, and he's in his 40s. And then suddenly he said, oh, look, there's this program at MIT where you can become a doctor in 4 years. I'm like, frankly, it's not going to be that easy. And then what do you want to be, an intern at 45? I'm not so sure about that, right? But for him, this was something that it doesn't let him go. Like, he is haunted by the fact that he didn't go down that path at some point. And there's always this, oh, maybe I would have been a great doctor. Oh, maybe I would have liked that. You don't have to answer that question for yourselves anymore. And I'm no Buddhist, and I never found that quote again, but I talked to a Buddhist monk at some point, and or is it, can it be? It was a woman, I don't know, she went to I don't know how that works. Anyway, so what she said to me was, there's this saying that if you see Buddha, you have to kill him. And what that meant apparently is, if there's something that you put on a high pedestal that you admire so much that you get some unrealistic expectations towards it, you have to make sure that you realize it's just of the same nature as everything else, and it's not more or less special, it's equally special as everything else. And I think there's a lot of stuff that we put on pedestals also within medicine that we aspired to, and then it becomes kind of normal, and there is some sort of a disappointment. Salima, you know the Paris syndrome, I think, quite well as well, right? So where people come to Paris, and I love Paris, and I kind of, at some point, I kind of need to live there again. It's been fantastic. But there are people who think it's Disney World, and then they realize, actually the metro is a bit smelly. They're like very simple problems as well. And they get into like deep frustration on the back of that. And I think that's a very healthy process to go through, and to kind of kill these demons, these illusions that you have, to then discover yourself more, discover your life more, and discover something that really, really means something. So and one last comment is, people always tend to judge decisions based on the outcome and not based on how good the quality of the decision was at the point when you made the decision, given the information that was or would have been available to you with what you had at that point. And so I think it's fine to say, look, I suddenly realize I don't want to do this in my 40s. it's just absolutely not what I thought I'd signed up for. And I think, first of all, that's completely okay.
Yeah, on that note, I would only say, based on how you introduced yourself, I must say, you're really ahead of the curve. So it took me 20 odd years to understand, my own identity as a doctor, how it's kind of been restricting me because of, this hamster wheel type of work, cycle work shifts and so on. You lose the sight of other things. So I'm really happy to hear that you're exploring other things, that you're trying other things, and then and also another thing with the medicine, there's two important points to remember. This really opens a lot of doors, and you have always a fallback, so you can dip your toes in something else where you still can hold on, to your medical field. If things go badly for you elsewhere, you can always return. There's certain conditions that you may need to fulfill to return, but it's usually not that difficult to return to medical field, even after a couple of years.
Yeah, no, sorry, just add. Yeah, I agree, because for us, we're always talking about, as medics, we want to do, masters in business or tech, all those interests we're doing. But if you flip it, not many people in engineering or business can say, oh, I'm interested in medicine, I'm going to do medical school. So we've almost, done that hard bit. The foundations is built on medicine, where we can, then branch out rather than coming from those branches and going to the foundation of medicine. So we're definitely at that advantage where, yeah, like you said, we can always fall back on medicine if something doesn't excite us, or we realize, what, maybe medicine is for me. So it's a privilege. I think it's almost realizing that we're at a very privileged spot to have this medical training in the backpack, and now we can use that build foundations, and just getting those opportunities now.
Yeah, Sushil.
Yeah, sorry, just to add on that as well, I think it's more the comfort zone, which, because I can rewind myself to where Sid is currently. So I think it's just that you follow the traditional path. You've done your medical school, done some entrance tests, and then you get a specialization. You stick to that. And then after that, the clear path is, okay, fine, you get more subspecialized into any specialty. And that's a very traditional and a clear path, which gives you that safe and comfort zone. And every time you have that thing inside you, okay, I want to break away from this, how do I do it? And there's no clear path there. And you have to just either take time out from your current work or whatever you're doing, and then try to explore things, which may not be feasible for all. Or you just carry on with this and try doing something else at the same time, which is what I'm trying to do. But yeah, I do feel like maybe I should have taken a bold step maybe 5-10 years back and explore this. Because I, like I said, I do have a person to compare myself with, and every time I kind of have these conversations with her, she gives me feedback and she tells me what I can do and what's happening. But yeah, it's just something which I might should have done earlier.
Yeah. So before we give voice, Josh, just a quick comment on that. What you said, there's no path. Look at all the famous, people in field of medicine, inventors, and so on. There was never a path. They just took the step. So I think where we are, you have choice sometimes of things that are already established, but for many things, you will have to find your way. There's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy, which it's more kind of marketing thing, but it explains how you can create your own space, how to create your own chances and opportunities. And I think what you could explore is, how to leverage creation of or your own opportunities. So there will be not that many, ready available, but there's ways of finding those opportunities through, I would say the biggest benefit of networking, building relationships with people is they come to you. And often it's unexpected opportunities that are opening, in front of your eyes. Yeah, Josh.
Yeah, to just kind of build on what Sushil also said about how he wished he did this about, 10 years ago or something like that. But I think from my background, being here in India. So I grew up in Singapore. I did my schooling and graduated high school and everything there, and then came to India. So it was a difficult transition, but then it took some time to get used to the things here. And, as you start your undergrad, that's like a big deal. Then you finish your undergrad, it's like, oh my gosh, what an achievement. And then you find out that it's just the start of the next set of the problems, right? And I think in India, as the other Indians in the group can attest to, but how the pressure and the whole thing of like, we need to specialize, that's the only thing you can do. And here we're just kind of focused on only doing the clinical things. It's been interesting in the last 1 year to tell my friends who I've known for many years at different stages of life that, yeah, I've taken a step back from the clinic, and I'm doing these kind of things. And they said, oh, well, that's interesting. We've never had a chance to look at that, or we've never understood that could happen. I said, neither did I. I didn't know that until the end of 22. But for that, in that being said, I think in the Indian setup, you're just hyper focused on finishing your degrees, getting the job, and being a surgical branch. It's another thing about how you need, like, private practice is always difficult because nobody's going to look at you and trust you that you can do a surgery. You're far too young. I still get the questions. So how does this guy do a knee replacement? Blah 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 blah. So that's another level of the whole thing. So that's the way I looked at it. Is like, let's try to have a little bit more of a sustainable life setup whilst using everything I know. And as I think Sid said, that it's we can apply what we know. We've been trained. We've got so much exposure on the ground. We've gotten our hands pretty dirty. It can be applied in so many different spaces. And to me, with the kind of applications that I've been getting into, it's been really enriching. And it's been nice to know that there's that side of me, which I probably wouldn't have known about 3 years ago because I was just too busy sitting in the clinic or waiting for my boss or running behind my boss or something like that. But it's been equally enriching. And, it's been 10 months, so I know I cannot expect great things to happen so fast. So I'm just kind of, hopefully waiting. But I think, as Sid said, that our skills are very transferable, and what we know can be used in other spaces and to good effect. And that's why I think for me, medical education was a big thing, is a big thing, because I think it's a way of leaving a very visible footprint in what we do. I'm not trying to save the world and all of that jazz, but it's been cool. So I think in this kind of setup, I think we don't have that focus, because growing up in Singapore, my dad has been in academics for almost 40 years. And people who finish medicine in Singapore, if they're pretty clear about, I think this applies in the UK as well, possibly, I don't know. But if you don't want to get into training, you might want to get a PhD, get into research, get into the whole lab scene and things like that. So people at an earlier stage kind of define what they want to do, or jump into an MBA right away. As Sushil said, maybe I thought I was a bit late. Maybe I am. I hope not. But let's see what happens.
Thanks. I mean, maybe a couple of comments. So Josh, I know that in the Indian culture, this is particularly strong. I think in a lot of other cultures, you have that as well. I have a friend who's Korean. He had the same pressures. He ended up not doing medicine, but he still had to get like a JD at least to make his father happy. But I think he still thinks that his son is a failure, although he made millions with other stuff. And frankly, I also kind of see it. I think it's much less maybe in the northern or central European regions, but my mother is still concerned, right? Because I don't have the job safety being an entrepreneur. Even when I was in the hospital and I decided to leave, I had some people really meant it well. They said to me, look, it's much easier to come back if you are a specialist, which I disagree, because half-life of medical knowledge isn't that long in many areas. And just because I have a specialist diploma doesn't mean that I will be able to perform like a specialist after 3 years. So, people have high expectations that I'll probably not be able to live up to. If I leave a bit earlier, then I'm a bit more excused, right? Like Wiktor said, I can go back, of course, right? But what's the added value in terms of being able to come back if I have a specialist degree versus I'm a few more years more junior than that? Some people also said, that the human being really only starts once you're a specialist. Before that, you're not fully human. That's a weird thing to say. But some people also actively tried to stop me because they just didn't like that somebody would challenge their career path and do something else. And often what people don't like about you is something that irritates them about themselves. And I think it's really important to become super smart in knowing whose advice to take. And if people have a very different reality from yours and they don't understand it, probably not the right people to listen to. So yeah, I fully agree with these observations, and I can imagine that there's a lot of pressure. And again, for me, it was the same until suddenly the amount of people who came to me and asked for guidance became more than the people who tried to stop me. I realized, okay, just because there's not a treaded path doesn't mean it doesn't lead to somewhere. And I mean, look, now we have this group here, which is really nice. And there's so many more people. And I keep thinking somehow we should put them all together in like one community or something like this so that you can exchange thoughts more and more. And you realize you're not at all out of the norm. It's just that within your hospital, you might be one or two, or people don't dare to speak up or don't dare to dream. And you're the guy or the woman who's doing the prison break, and the others stayed in their cage. And that's difficult. And I think another big topic around that is, it seems to me that often doctors expect somebody else to give them permission to do something. And that's also reflected in many of the questions around what should I learn? So before I can do something else, I need a diploma that certifies that I'm qualified to do that. So obviously I need to get another degree. Obviously I need to do this. And I've been in there. I have 3 additional degrees on top of medicine. I'm doing 1 certificate program every year, and I still do it. And I'm actually trying to stop myself from it, because I know, of course, I'm learning from that. Of course, there's value in good education. I'm not saying, don't do it, but I often feel like we do it for the wrong reason. And one way out is to also just become more of an autodidact. And YouTube is full of great content. You can read books, you can learn by doing. And you have already strong accolades, and you are recognized automatically because you chose one of the most difficult studies. So chances are you will find your way somewhere else. And that could still mean that you could do an MBA, right? It's nice. You get to ski with fascinating people that inspire you. And you will also get a different socialization, a different identity, etc. That's all great. The education content, if you go to a good school, would also be good, but it doesn't necessarily have to be just to give you permission to step out or to become somebody else, right? That's something that I would warn against. And then this whole topic around am I too late? Should have started earlier. So I love this saying where it goes: the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago, and the second best time is now. That of course is true for us as well. It's not like you have been wasting your time. You have been spending a lot of time acquiring a lot of skills, discovering yourself, etc. That will help you right now too. But I also believe that if you start to do it now, the other saying is, when a student is ready, the teacher appears. So now you end up running into other people that are similarly minded. You find courses that are out there that could be interesting for you, and the things start to come together. And then also, frankly, if you look at, I can send you this, there's a nice book called Super Founders, where a scientist and venture capitalist from the US looked at a lot of the startups and what made the ones super successful and what were the people behind it. And he's looking at a lot of stuff. One thing he realized is that the founders who create unicorns, big companies in the healthcare space, they often started founding it in their 40s. And of course, they founded something else before and have some experience. But his argument was that it's such a complicated field, not just because of the science, also because of how the ecosystem is, with like a payer, provider, patient dynamic, and this regulation, the cultural aspect, everything. And to really understand that and become an expert in it, you have to go a long time through it. And so, yeah, I would be a bit relaxed on the timing front.
Yeah, I think it's important that you are already aware that this world outside, because I wasn't for many years I was just a clinician, until it started to affect my mental health. Then I only started to, reevaluate my values, and arrived, at this juncture that there's more to me than just being a doctor. And in terms of, looking for other opportunities and so on, I've seen there was last year a report from McKinsey. They are saying that in years to come, every professional will change their career path 3 times in their lifetime. So there's no too late thing, like, is it like 10 years too late, 20 years too late? We need to be more flexible, adaptable, and accept that we will need to upscale and branch out. This is something that medicine usually does not learn us. We are just in this like medical mode. But I'm really happy to hear what you are guys saying. It means that like you're open-minded, and you sort of understand that there's really a lot of other opportunities outside that you can explore. Where do we segue from here?
I have a question, which I always like to ask and be asked, and maybe that's helpful. But guys, feel free to jump in. Right, we wanted to keep it very spontaneous. But so one question that often leads really good insights I generally ask at people is sort of, what is the one thing that you wish you knew before you went into X? And I think in case of Wiktor, he transitioned from being a full-time GP, like you just said, into somebody who built up this portfolio. And the portfolio, part of the things that you're seeing right now is working on sort of helping other doctors, fellow doctors, find a more meaningful path. But when I say this, I don't want to be demeaning towards the clinicians. I mean, like, more meaningful for yourself, given who you are in terms of talents, interest, also personal circumstance, etc. But Wiktor, what is there something that you say, like, if you would meet yourself again before you decided to go half-time and then half-time into portfolio, what would be the one advice you would have liked to have received?
I would hope that I would get advice along the lines that you're not your job. So you're not like your identity as a doctor is not completely defining everything around your life, and being able to understand that by seeking things outside, learning outside. So to make it more clear, like for last year, I made kind of agreement with myself that every year I will learn something new that's completely not related to medicine, which may mean, like, attending a conference, doing a course, or getting some kind of relationship with someone who is not a doctor, is not meddling in medicine, because those this gives you this opens eyes, and you see the world a bit different. I keep on coming back to this, like, how medicine is restricting you, and unfortunately it is. So yeah, so you're not your job.
Very good. Such a common theme for doctors, I think.
Okay.
I think something for me is like I've stopped, following the herd kind of mentality, where you just do what everybody else is trying to do, or you try to do something which is really cool, or something which adds more value in terms of finance or anything else. Try to divide my life into various domains, organize things in terms of my health, fitness, education, and in different domains. I've made goals for myself, and I've just asked myself very serious questions as to why I want to do this, and just pursue that for that reason, resisting pressures from maybe close family, friends, as to they might criticize me or they might mock me saying that, okay, you can be an established consultant. Why do you want to leave all this and move to something else? But I think only I know why I have certain requirements, and I don't need to prove it to anybody else or give my reason. So as long as I have a clear trajectory, and I've made mistakes, but I will learn from them. And I'm kind of a person, I try to take steps one step at a time, and learn from my mistakes and implement them. So I think I am in a path where I've made a lot of progress, and going forward I can probably accomplish many more things. Yeah.
Yes, from what you're saying, social, I think, is another. Sorry for like jumping all over, but I think as doctors we're kind of perfectionists, and this kind of fear of failure can be restricting. So like you overthink every single step and what's going to happen, and worst case scenarios. So you're learning more from failure than from successes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry. I think for me, the biggest question or something that I need to think about or want to ask is there a right time to make this jump, or is it just you take it along? Because obviously I'm at a medical student level. It used to be at least finish CCT and then start branching out, or it was like finish F1, F2 and then start branching out. But now I'm seeing some students who are like finishing med school and then going straight into like graduate schemes and stuff. It's like, is there a right time to make that jump, or is it just you just take the opportunity as it comes? Because I know in medicine there are certain points where if you do kind of diverge out, it's a bit more difficult to come back in, whereas maybe once you're a CCT, it's a bit easier to come back in. So do you guys have any thoughts on when to really make the bigger jump?
I very much do. And well, of course, the answer is it depends, but I have some thoughts on what it depends on. So maybe I start with what would I answer to the question of what's the one thing I wish I knew. I've recently came across a saying, which is basically, it doesn't matter so much how good you are at rowing. It matters what boat you're in. And I think what we are super good at, we're super good rowers. Give me a 24-hour shift, done. Oh, I need to add another 6 hours? Of course. You want me to publish a paper? Yeah, let's do it. And you can work with any type of adversity. I don't know, there are no syringes or something like that. You'll find some workaround. You will solve a problem, and you will not question it, because and on the other end, there's somebody who needs you and who needs you to not give up for them. That's very simple. I had a military career before, same mindset. You just don't quit. That's just not the option. But in life in general, I think there's big value in also asking yourself, am I fighting the right war? Is this the right thing to do? Should I be covering up for a system that's super ineffective, where instead of having a fax machine, maybe they could just have an email, and that would already solve a lot of my problems. Why is it my job now to fix it? And if you have a lot of doctors keeping up a broken system, rowing in a boat that is like full of holes, where somebody should just fix the holes, and you could have one rower, right? And everybody's like, oh, we need more stuff. Well, maybe you allow the stuff that's there to be more effective, and then a lot of the problems would not be there in the first place. But that goes back to a lot of topics. So I love this boat analogy because it has a lot of things in it, right? You can have a fast boat, you can have a slow boat, you can have only one paddle, and maybe you're the only one paddling and the rest is just sitting around doing stupid stuff or stopping you. And then the next part is, and so choose the right boat, but also know who else you are on the boat with, because your environment is going to highly affect how you think, how you feel about things, what things you allow yourself to think, how you think about the things that you allow yourself to think, the things that you don't know, which are super important for us, much more than the things we do know that we know. And if you are only surrounded by other doctors, then you quickly end up in a groupthink echo chamber situation, which will probably shorten your horizon in some way. You will make it deeper, etc., but it will not allow you necessarily to go further. And then the last part is also with that boat analogy is, of course, where is that boat heading? And is it heading into a direction that does make sense? So for a doctor, we are used to hardship, we just stick through it. A lot of people would quit something because it's getting hard. That's where we start usually. But quitting is also a really important skill to have, and knowing when to quit. And the question for me is the one that I find is the easiest to come to that decision is, what is at the end of it? Is there a benefit that that justifies that I'm going through that hardship right now? The benefit could be a massive benefit to society. I have published papers and I did my best job and I spent weekends and I said no to friends when they wanted to have dinner and so on. And the thing has been, I don't know, read by 10 people or cited 3 times, like, was that really worth it? It's a good piece, but was it worth it? No, maybe not, and my MD thesis was on the ethics of, I don't even want to go into it, but I really regret having done that because it didn't add value to society, not enough. And so that's important, right? And if now going back to your actual question, so what is the right time? And I think part of it is also, do you enjoy that ride? So don't only just try to reverse engineer it. We're so good at going, oh, at some point I want to be there and now I just have to work hard and I will get there. No, there's a legitimate argument made for why you should also be enjoying the journey. And part of it is because you don't know, and we know that really well, how long your life is going to last and if you will ever get to that point, right? Part of it is also, it's so much easier to go through a tough journey if you're also enjoying the journey and not just the outcome. And part of it is also, you might get to the outcome and you realize, wait, that's really not what I expected. It's not what I like. So you're paying forward basically for something that you don't honestly really know most of the time if it's really what you want. And then finally, another good saying that I really like is, what you work on works more on you than you work on it, because it shapes you. Your experiences shape you. Again, your surrounding shapes you. And these would all be things that I would put into my calculation when I'm making the decision, should I now be doing FY1, 2, whatever. If you feel like I will leave medicine clinically at some point, but I kind of still want to go through that because I just want to live through it. I don't want to miss that. You have the privilege that you can do that. That's the way I would put it, right? So rather than thinking I need to opt out, I would rather think like, do I want to opt into this? And then the second aspect is like, how long do you want to go? So there are some areas, for example, if you want to have like some leadership role in pharma, in cardiology, they typically like to have somebody who's a cardiologist if it's a clinician-facing role. But for other roles, actually, they don't even have people with a STEM background sometimes. So if there's something very specific where I need to have this and this and this, okay, fair enough. But and also having some clinical experience really, really helps on my view. It really changed how I thought about medicine. It showed me how naive I was on how easy some things are. It allowed me to understand better the dynamics. A lot of the things I'm doing today, I can only do it not because of my medical studies so much, but because of the couple of years in clinical practice that I had and the conversations around and so on. So there is something valuable to learn in the earlier years. But that's only one aspect that I would look at. And then finally, you have to be mindful of opportunity cost. You can only sit in one boat, right? So if you would say, well, I'm not going to do this residency, but instead I will, I don't know, making stuff up. Bye, Josh. Thank you for joining us.
You too, Josh.
Let's stay connected for sure.
Yes, thank you so much.
So the alternative could be that you do a master's in computer science, or I don't know, whatever else it is. And suddenly you become somebody who has a very unique combination of skills that make you super valuable, and maybe more valuable than somebody who finished FY2, right? Because that's a commodity. You have a lot of these people. So yeah, maybe you put all of these things on the table, and then you start to write down your faults on each of these, and maybe you can also rank them if that helps. But certainly, this is how I would widen my lens when I look at that problem, rather than just trying to find a generic answer. When are you really, I don't know, ready to leave, or when is your medical education good enough, etc.
Can I just add something, Sven? So just what Sid was asking. So for me, I've kind of had interest in oncology. So I've come a long way in this oncology path, and I want to kind of integrate technical knowledge and something which I can contribute using an oncology background. This is where I kind of have my ideas going around. So it may be different for you. So if you feel you're passionate about going in some particular field or area you want to be good at, and then later you want to branch out into something else, then that will be totally fine. And so you always have that extra option of having that knowledge which you have gained. So it will come to use some point in the future.
I just add a few words to Sid. So I've been a doctor for 23 years. So my message to you, it's never too late. So there's no good or bad time. And the second thing is actually not a medical school that makes a doctor. It's this 2 years of FY that are formative. So it's kind of difficult to give advice. You have to weigh your own sort of circumstances, but I think it's always worth having this first 2 years of medical practice, even for later. It's a bit different, looking as an experience as a doctor rather than just like having a degree as a doctor.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. Yeah, for sure. I think, sorry, I had another question. That's okay. Yeah. So this might be, I think when it comes to doctors, finance and, money and income is all this frowned upon topic that a lot of people like to, just kind of beat around the bush with, right? And obviously in current state of the NHS, doctor strikes going on, consultant strikes going on. But relatively, if you view from an outside lens, doctors do have a stable salary in terms of, maybe it's not what we expect compared to peers in America and Australia, but it is a stable salary and it comes regularly, right? I'm just want to ask, obviously, to Wiktor and Sven, like when you branch out, how do different portfolio careers, if you guys can talk about it, how's the income streams, how's the finances, how does it work, that aspect of it? Do you think you're better off than just doing full medicine, doing locums, or do you think maybe the less salary is worth the enjoyment or excitement that you get from doing a variety of things?
So in my case, this is kind of a nice to have additional gig rather than a chance of complete change. So my additional roles are essentially stemming from experience that I already have. So I wouldn't be able to do any of those things if I would leave straight after medical school. So as a medical teacher or as a health tech startup consultant, these are not any huge amounts of money that I would be earning. So it's more like kind of giving me some kind of headspace away from the clinic, keeps me more kind of fulfilled, gives me some opportunities for self-development. So from that point of view, financially, I wouldn't call that, like a significant and stable stream of income. It might be a bit different with Sven.
So I went through different types of revenue streams for myself. And my first one outside of the hospital was in a management role at a kind of a corporate startup of a hospital. So they wanted to build something new. The day I signed that contract, I doubled my salary. And on top, I had a budget for like top tier education, Harvard, MIT, etc., in the thousands. And nobody questioned that. I didn't even negotiate for that salary. I asked for a little bit more than a doctor's salary. We're like, sorry, you're new to this, right? We're gonna go higher. Okay. So, and that was suddenly a figure where I didn't have to really check my wallet or my bank account in the month. It was just, okay, I wasn't super thrifty. But by the time my money ran out, the month was done and there was new cash on it. And then here and there, there's a bonus and so on. And that was so relieving. I before that, I was like, I don't care about money or whatever. But suddenly you don't have to stress about it. You don't have to count, oh, let's go have dinner. You can visit a friend somewhere else where you have to take a plane, and it's just not an issue anymore. That was super important. And there's always the saying, money doesn't make you happy. But I do believe that having a certain sense of safety does add a lot of quality of life. And I had a situation where I was getting in a fight with another senior doctor. I felt completely unfairly treated. Effectively, what happened is I was a very junior doctor, like 4th, 5th month, and I saw a heart attack. But the attack was seen a bit too late. We're not talking hours, we're talking, I don't know, a couple of minutes. And then I tried to reach the cardiologist and I didn't. Because, I don't know, his phone didn't work and something went wrong and it took really long. And then I engaged the ICU so that they could take care of him. And he was trying to blame me and put it all on me. And he did really nasty things to make it happen. I got protected by others and it was well documented, so it didn't go anywhere. But in that moment, I felt like I will have to come back here tomorrow and the day after and probably the next month because I have no alternative. And I don't have the cash cushion to just say, you know what, guys, I'm going to be gone here and I'm just going to find something new in the next 2 or 3 months. No, I needed that money. And just for one aspect where I think let's not be so negative about money. The other part is the things that really make us happy in life. Of course, it's not necessarily a fancy car, but it's experiences, I think, and learnings and good moments with friends and also acts of generosity that you can have. And having more money makes all of these things so much easier. So now, right now, I'm an entrepreneur. I have my own companies, and one of it makes, or 2 of them make some money. One of it will need probably still years, but it's funded with external capital, and so very soon I will be able to get a normal salary out of it, just like an employed person. But I also own a significant share of that company. So if I do everything well, and often these startups fail, but if it goes well, this could turn into single, double, triple-digit millions as a cash out, and that's also super cool. Even if it's just I don't know, 50,000, 100,000, or something like that, as a windfall that just comes on top, that also changes things. Suddenly you can, I don't know, get a home somewhere, take a year off. I didn't need to work at all for a year, and I enjoyed working anyway, but it was all on my terms. I got up when I wanted, I did my workout in the morning, everything. And now also I have some really nice income streams where I talk for an hour and I get a couple thousand euros wired to my bank account for that, right? And I get to talk, to meet people, and so on. And you give 2 to 3 talks per month, and you're done. You're funded. You know, you don't have to do like night shifts and everything. And that's only one of my income streams. So even if suddenly nobody wants to book me as a speaker anymore, then I still have some consulting. I have I don't know, the book and other things that kind of come together and provide me with a better income than I would have had as a doctor right now, right? And if I'm tired and I want to take a nap in between, I just do that, right? So I'm completely, and I think that's true wealth, right? If you are in charge of your schedule on a daily basis, on a weekly, on a monthly basis, and on a yearly basis, you can really do the things that you want. It's not about retiring early. I think no one here is keen on doing that, but it's about taking a very active, committed decision every day on what you think is adding most value to your day. So that's my view on money, frankly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sven.
I think anyone can reach this stage, but can you share with us how long this journey took, Sven?
It's a bit hard to say, actually. So I think I could have been much faster if I had listened closely to that what boat you row in analogy. And I was too long in this mindset of I need to trade hard work for money. And so the one big thing to think about is leverage. What gives you leverage? And if you just trade money for time one-on-one, you have zero leverage. So if you are in a super high valued profession, maybe you can get a high day rate for that, but that's capped. But once you get into, I don't know, so the doctor's book doesn't make like a lot of money, but it's a small market. We didn't do it for the money and so on. But just in theory, like every month, Amazon sends me a message saying, "Oh, we're now wiring you some money," and that's for something that I've written now a year and a half ago, and it will keep going, and that's charming, right? Or so some people pay me advisory fees every month just so that I'm on the board and they can call me when they need something. And so on. And this gives me leverage because I don't need to necessarily work a lot for it. Real estate is another one. Anyway, so for me, when I left the clinic, again, like the minute I signed the new contract, I had a good salary that I didn't need to look on my bank account. And then I kept doing that kind of stuff for like 6 years or something like this. And then that's when I really started to jump into this, where I realized people are paying me so much just to give a talk. Why am I not doing that instead? And then I only need to give a few talks per month and that's it. And so on. And yeah, I think, so I would probably say it took me 6 years. I think if you're smarter than me, you can do that in 3 years, probably.
So yeah, sorry, I just want to add on. So obviously coming to your point about leverage, right? So when you made that jump after the 6 years, what gave you most of the leverage? Was it your clinical background, you being a doctor, or was it other experiences you did in those 6 years that added more value? Because, right now there's a mentality among students, some students at least, that, just because you did med school, that investment banks will come knocking at your door to give you a job. Yeah. But obviously they're never going to pick a doctor over someone who's done 3 years of an economics or finance degree, right? So yeah. What's given you the leverage? I'm sure there's some aspect of it just directly contributing to you being a medical professional, but yeah. How much would you weigh in terms of, is it a 50-50, 60-40?
Very good question. So the being a doctor part is crucial. And that's something people can't really copy afterwards. By the time they realize that's a good thing, it's too late. It would take them, even if you do the 4-year program at MIT, you still don't have the experience and so on. And the places that I'm playing in are places where they really need somebody with medical expertise. And I would double down on that. I wouldn't now say, oh, do real estate. You're just underestimating the challenges there. But do something where you can play with your edge, unless you really hate it. But the second part, and that's a big topic, and I've hired a lot of doctors, had a lot of recruitment calls, and there are some patterns that really drive me crazy with doctors. And often it's extremely poor self-management, extremely poor teamwork skills, project management is a disaster. Effective communication is, I don't know, just like small brackets of like some content, but the whole message, like 90% of the message you would expect is not there. So, it's like, we need to meet, please let me know when. I can do tomorrow at 11. Like, no, I can't tomorrow at 11. Okay, I can do, then why don't you just send me like a full list of your availability so that, I can send you one more message and then we can conclude that and so on. Like, why does it always have to dribble like this and so on? These are like the smaller things, sometimes also the bigger things. And I think doctors can be very dogmatic. I worked with one, he always mixed up his personal opinion with science and had his very strong ethics where he said, we can't do this, we can't do this. And it's like, okay, but separate these things. You're entitled to have your own opinion, but let other people also have your opinion. You're not the boss here. You're the medical expert. And so separate this. Things like working with PowerPoint, creating like a good storyline, clear, effective communication, all things you can learn, but that we typically don't. If you look at slides that doctors make, you feel like it's an epilepsy test, and so on. And then, of course, financial understanding. It's great to have a good idea on how to do something, but is that idea also technically feasible and is it economically viable? Doctors often come from if I see this when they develop apps, they're like, oh, I'm building this app that helps people with COPD to do more workouts a day. And then like, okay, great. We also know that many people who have COPD spend their last 30, 40, 50 years not doing sports and instead smoking. So I get that you want them to do that, but how are you making them do that? Why, are you catering to a subjective want or just to a medical need? And so on. So a lot of things, how do you prioritize, etc. And I think that's where doctors are a little bit naive, maybe a little bit arrogant in thinking that their medical skill is so precious, but it's only precious if you can connect it to something else. It's like having an electricity plug, but you have nothing to plug it in. So then you can't use it. And I would invest in exactly these translational skills, or in setting up the other side of the bridge, in that bridge. Yeah, Sushi.
Sorry, Sven, and just in connection to that, I know you've been asked this multiple times, MBA, and what degrees and other things. I personally want to do a degree to improve my business acumen and other leadership skills and various other things, which obviously some of the things I've not learned in a medical profession. MBA obviously comes on top of that, and there are some leadership programs and various other things which you can do. Any one thing which you can recommend is really worth doing to build up those skills and fill in these gaps which you just mentioned. So then it will be a good fit to at least transition into a technical role.
I'm very good. I'm a little bit opinionated with MBAs. I feel like do it in one of the global top schools or don't do it, because the content itself you can learn it, or then you can do like these like online MBA, the very short ones. I forgot what they're called, but they're like a few €1,000 or pounds, and that's it. It's not a real MBA, but you get the content, and that would help. Frankly, maybe you can also just look at all the curricula or ask ChatGPT, what are the books I need to read if I don't want to do an MBA, and stuff like that, right? So I think you can get really, really far without the degree. Where the degree really comes in is if you have a super well curated cohort of co-students and people who are used to teaching them because they are super demanding. And that's then where opportunities come up, where you will have conversations in the evening around dinner with them, or skiing again. This is the thing where you also understand more and more how these things work, and just having the opportunity is super important, right? So that positions you better. If you go to like a pure online MBA thing or something in a local place, you will probably end up being a little bit uninspired and waste a lot of time and money, I think.
Okay.
So if you want to have an MBA, I think the advantages are that people in, for example, finance, consulting industries, and so on, they will have the trust that you are easily plug and play to what they need because you understand it and you have the credentials, and you have also the habitus, so the way of acting, which is a different, or of reasoning, of structuring your thoughts. It's very different from the medical one, and getting out of that also, like, it's not just about how you speak, what you know, it's also how do you structure your thoughts. And I found that very striking. If I go and talk to other professions, how that's different, and getting a feel for that is important. Other than that, Stanford has fantastic online programs, much cheaper, a couple of thousand, couple of hundred, depending on what it is. It's recognized. There's a thing called Udacity, where you can have a subscription. You can take all sorts of very practical, applied kind of programs, and that will also be a certificate. And the good thing is, like, if you read, so now I'm talking from a recruiter perspective, right? If I'm looking at a CV and I see somebody who has done a lot of online programs, I will be a little bit skeptical. I will be thinking, okay, is that really a legit person? Sometimes it's easy to fake it. How much have they really learned there? But if somebody comes with a medical degree, then I don't doubt their ability to work hard and study ad nauseam to really fight through something. And if then they come with additional courses, I believe that it's legitimate, and I like it. I don't necessarily need to get another like certified master's degree from something. I mean, if you have the time, if you feel like you want to enhance your social environment and you want to really have dedicated focus time to do something and you need a bit of hand-holding, which is completely okay, then going through a structured master program, I think is great. Can be a cool life experience. Again, I did one program in Cambridge, another one in Oxford. The people I met there, the network I have until now, I constantly get invitations to all sorts of dinners and balls and I don't know what, yachting. And that's cool, right? So that I would have missed out on if I would have only gone to YouTube. And if you can do it, do it. But it doesn't have to be. And sometimes also, last thought, and then I'll shut up. But at least when I talk about myself, and I see that in some others, there's always this wish of everything has to happen now. I now need to get this. There's always in a rush. But sometimes there's also beauty in saying, you know what? I'm not going to do an MBA now. I will do an executive MBA when I'm in my late 30s, early 40s, and I have something to look forward to. And by that time, I will have built up this and this and this. I will learn these and these things. And then I come and I have a break somehow that is compatible with career and family because it's designed for that. And I will take that moment to reflect on my life for the next 20 years. And that's what I'm allocating that MBA life to. That's something you could do, right? Full stop.
Ideally, that the last thing which you just said is what I actually aspire to do, Sven. That's what I really think I'd prefer as well.
On this subject of MBA, I don't have MBA myself, but I have a couple of friends and who have MBA, and after discussion with them, I think there's two things to consider. So all of them are essentially confirming what Sven was saying. So the real value seems to stem from all those connections and relations that you build during the course with other people and your mentors, rather than the subjects and so on. And the second thing, how are you going to actually apply that? So if I, as a GP, do an MBA and carry on being GP, that's not very convincing for anyone. So that's another aspect of it. Right, I think we got just a few minutes more, so just go ahead with your questions, guys, and we'll then wrap up.
I have a question. For usually doctors who are switching into health tech, they have the years of clinical experience and all. But for newbies like me, we don't have much to bring to the table. So what sorts of skills or courses would be better? Your advice?
I have to disagree. So you're probably in this kind of mindset that you have to, God knows what kind of experience and skills for health tech. So if you look at LinkedIn, there's a lot of people working in CMOs, advisors, and they are very early in their medical career. So depending on the role, there's so many different roles and they're not well defined. You may need more or less skills and knowledge, but don't discount yourself purely because you're kind of early in your career or even a medical student. I know medical students who are, chief marketing officer for a company. So it's not like that. In terms of skills, I don't know, Sven, would you add something on this?
I just wanted to fully agree with you. We tend to underestimate ourselves. There's so much you can do in terms of, let's leave aside your factual knowledge, just the skills you need to get to where you are right now. They make you part of the top, 2-5% of the population. And that is strong. So if you wanted to go somewhere else, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, often it really depends on the people you meet personally. They might look at your LinkedIn or whatever it is and be bored or not give you a chance. They might meet you in person and be delighted. And suddenly opportunities come. I had a couple of months ago in my office, there was suddenly this 21-year-old woman, German, Turkish origin, just about to finish her bachelor's degree and dressed up in a nice suit with her CV printed out. And she says, I'm here because I want to have an internship with you, starting maybe next week if it's possible. And I could not resist. She was so eager, so smart, so clearly knew what she wanted, and she has been amazing. It's been such a joy to see her perform, to grow, etc. I introduced her to so many people, and she constantly, people thought she was 28, like even senior managers, and nobody understood where she comes from. And it's just her attitude, her intellect, her eagerness to learn and grow, and she would go really far very soon, I'm sure. If she wanted to found something tomorrow, I wouldn't even ask what it is. I would just invest, because I'm sure she will make it fly. And I think that's kind of something that you can portray, and where people normally they take excitement. And if you don't know what you need to do, I think one cool thing to say is, look, just give me your biggest problem right now, and let me work on solving that, whatever that is. And if you have advice on what I need to learn to get there, give it to me and I will do it. And if that's an attitude you bring in, that's already really good. And you can play that almost anywhere. And if people ask you, but why are you qualified? And you can just say, look, I'm becoming a doctor. I'm a doctor, whatever. I studied all of this. I know how to fight for a lot of things, and I know how to learn things in a very short amount of time. So just give me that chance. It would work probably most. And if people don't get that, you don't want to work with them anyway, you know.
Yeah, it's probably also as looking what is your kind of strength. So I might be invited to work with a startup that's working on a solution that works in UK in GP practice on workflow of documents. Obviously, you will have idea about that, but there will be other things in other medtech companies that I have no clue, and you might have much more interest or experience.
Can I just ask one question? Sorry. There are these job adverts which keep coming out. It's noticed medical advisors for either pharmaceutical or health tech or any other company. Are they expecting you to completely leave your NHS job and be in their role, or is there some overlap where you can do both? I've not really studied much into that, but I just want to ask, is there an option of doing both at the same time?
In many cases, the bias is towards something full-time, because there's so many complications that come with it. Conflict of interest quite quickly, conflict of time, rarely is something half-time really half-time, it's often more. Or they would tell you, yeah, of course you can do it half-time, but then they really need you on that one Friday, and on that one Friday you also need it somewhere else, and then it clashes, and then there will be frustration. So if you can navigate that well, it's okay. I have been advising a lot of different big companies in my freelance capacity, and they really like it, because they're not just buying sort of my brain and expertise, but they're also buying my knowledge of the wider ecosystem. They're buying the fact that I am advising a lot of different companies, and I understand. Of course, I can't dump onto the table what other companies are working on. I have confidentiality there, but I can implicitly let them understand where the industry is going, what the focus is, because I am having very deep conversations with people around the topics that you will probably read in the news about in 6 months or 12 months. So they're buying this earlier access to what's going on in the market type of information. And that works pretty well. So I think probably in most of the cases, it's either full-time in one thing, or it's full-time portfolio. This is a generalization that I'm sure if I would think about it for 5 minutes, I have 30 exceptions for it. But I think my gut first answer would be, if you were to position yourself, that you're probably looking into that.
I think it's always worth exploring further, because that also depends, what companies, how far they are in their journey. So we're talking like, early startups, that will be like, ad hoc thing, freelance thing. Even if they offer you some kind of CMO role, it might be like 4 hours a month or 3 hours a week. So again, that depends, and this will vary from company to company, what they are doing and what stage they are.
And I suppose the only way is to once you do your proper research is to just take the plunge. I think probably apply for one of those jobs and see. I think that would be the probably only way, I suppose, to go ahead.
I think so. The best way is to have a conversation with these people, and then you can always backtrack if it's not what you were expecting, or you tried something and it's not working for you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Right, Sid. Last question. Anything?
I think you guys have answered most of my questions today. No, thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll be wrapping up. So I just maybe say a few words. So thanks for coming. It was a real pleasure to meet you, to speak to you, to find out about you, and it's quite inspiring what your guys doing. And I hope you found some kind of usefulness from this meeting. Sven?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so thanks for this. For me, it's a big pleasure to meet with people like yourselves. It's really cool that you come from so many different places in the world, because it's exciting in the first place. But also, I feel like if we put our interests together like that going forward, many of the problems are global within healthcare. A lot of the challenges are similar, and we bring similar backgrounds. We will all be going into different directions, but there will be a lot of overlap. So my true hope is that we can at some point really grow this community. People know each other, and support each other as we go forward. And if that's sometimes emotional support or contacts or whatever it might be, that doesn't really matter, but whatever is going to be helpful. So please don't be strangers, and also try to, if there are other people that need to hear some things, just, try to share the word. I think we will be doing more of those also, maybe creating some more content around it. If there are questions that you think we really should be answering, that would be very helpful, because then it's easier to create a pipeline of content where other people would say, oh, yeah, that really addresses me or my concerns, and so that would be highly appreciated. But yeah, other than that, I'm looking forward. I'm not sure if we're all connected on LinkedIn, but we should do it.
Yeah.
So I'd love to follow your journeys. It's exciting.
No, thank you so much for giving us your time on this Saturday, afternoon. It's been really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Wiktor and Sven. Thank you all. Really useful session today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.